Now, we have talked a lot on this programme about post-traumatic stress, but is enough help being provided for former members of the armed services?
Well, 62-year-old war veteran and PTSD sufferer Gus Hales claims the lack of care for ex-soldiers is so bad that he's now gone on hunger strike to campaign for better mental health support. And there you are. We can now go live to Newport in Shropshire, and there you've got Gus, where he is now 5 days into that protest. And, you know, we're a bit worried about you, Gus, doing this at your age and stage in life, and the fact that you suffer from this PTSD. How are you doing?
OK, Eamonn. I'm feeling good fettle, and I'm keeping warm, and the local people are supporting me with plenty of drinks. So I'm pretty determined, pretty resolute, and I'm carrying on.
Well, you'd have to be pretty resolute and pretty determined. Will you tell people what you're determined about? What are you protesting about?
Well, just during the last 4 days, 3 veterans have committed suicide, and I believe the figures are that 14 veterans committed suicide in October alone. This year, it's around about 56, I believe. This is the figures I've been given from the British Legion. I've suffered with this condition for 30 years. I've been to many colleagues' funerals. I went through the Falklands campaign, and obviously in combat you expect losses. What you don't expect is the slow, insidious corrosion of a man until he feels he can't live any longer and takes his own life. And some of those guys have been my mates. Now, like you say, being 62 is important because I'm coming into the winter of my life, and I don't want the next generation of people to suffer the 30 years of this that I have suffered.
Gus,
help needs to be put in place.
Yeah, Gus, you were receiving help, and you were receiving help from the charity Combat Stress. In the very centre you're sitting outside today, the Audley Court Treatment Centre in Newport. What help were you receiving, and why did it stop?
I don't know why it stopped. That's why I'm sitting here. They won't give me any answers. I was treated here for about 15 to 20 years, which stabilised me, kept me in a good state of mental health. Then one day while I was at home, one of their welfare officers knocked on my door. I didn't know who it was. I answered the door. I asked him what he wanted. He said, "I've come to see how you are." I said, "Why? You haven't bothered with me for a couple of years." And he said, "If you won't let me in, then I'll discharge you." Him, a non-medically trained, non-mental health, non-psychiatrically trained person, just a lay person, discharged me on the doorstep of my home and went.
And how did you deal with that? How did you deal with that, Gus? How has your mental health state been since they discharged you?
Very difficult. It felt like my support network had gone. I came inside the house. He left. He didn't know what condition I was in after that meeting. I felt pretty despondent. It felt like I'd fell off the trapeze and there was no safety net there.
OK, yeah. Combat Stress, it had to drop residential treatment at the centre because there were 29 beds there for people suffering with PTSD, and the centre was one of 3 run by the charity, but NHS England has withdrawn £3.2 million in funding. Now, there's a lot of dispute about whether funding is available or services are available, Gus, but I'd like to talk. You've got a lot of supporters, and I want to get round to people who have got things to say in your favour, one of which is the broadcaster Nick Ferrari. And, Nick, I know you agree with the points that Gus is making here, but you can also see NHS England have told us they are investing £6.2 million a year so they can treat more patients. The MOD says we take mental well-being of our serving and former personnel extremely seriously, and Combat Stress even say we have seen no evidence to support Mr Hale's statement that Falklands, Northern Ireland and pre-9/11 veterans have been discharged without any care plan or reason for discharge.
You're absolutely right. As ever in these cases, there's claim and counterclaim. Campaigners say they've taken millions away. The NHS and other bodies saying we're putting millions in. Let's hold on to one number that Gus just gave us, shall we? It's either 52 or it's 56 people, I don't think they're all men, by the way, Gus, who have taken their lives of coming out of the military because they cannot cope with the stress. That is more than 1 a week. We have something called the military covenant, that if men like Gus and women are brave enough to go on the front line, to risk their lives, to risk their limbs, to risk their sanity, when they come back, the covenant decrees that we do everything we can for them. And I'm here to tell you that I think we're failing. I think the MOD is far better than it probably was in Gus's day. I think they take it very seriously now, the emotional health of men and women who leave. But clearly we are in a mopping up process. I hate to use that expression, but personnel such as Gus and others who weren't part of this new embracing. That is what we need to address. And at a time when we can find £420 million to fill in potholes in the road, which I admit is a very good idea, I'm not saying it's not, we can't find a few more million to help people like Gus, I think it's wholly wrong.
It's interesting, we're sitting here with our poppies on
Indeed.
today, isn't it? Remembering all those brave
If ever there was a
people who fought
time
for this country.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Gus's campaign would touch anybody who cares, who has time to look at the situation. If there can be a more poignant or symbolic time as we approach, still a few days to go, but such a crucial Armistice Day, because of course it is 100 years since the cessation of World War I. I don't think there could be, I hate to use the word better time, because I feel very, very sorry for Gus, but it's perfect really to get it front of mind.
Let's go back to Gus. Gus, how did this affect you in your day-to-day life? Because they often say that PTSD creeps up on people. They don't always recognise the symptoms. You know, they struggle with their families understanding what they're going through. How did it affect you and your family?
Yeah, terribly. I live most of my time in isolation. I prefer to be outdoors like this. I feel more comfortable here than what I actually do in a house. I don't think I've had a proper full night's sleep in 36 years. There's always a kind of high level of anxiety, agitation, and I've never felt settled. And I can relate it to the certain experiences in the Falklands War where my brain patterns changed. I remember the incidents.
Well, and Gus, on that subject, I think you'll be very, very interested to hear from our next contributors. And they're people who actually believe that the condition you and so many others suffer from, post-traumatic stress disorder, can be cured. And that's Nick and Eva Speakman, who campaign about this and who joined us now from their home in Lancashire. Guys, when you go and you talk to the authorities and you say this can be cured, what tends to be the reaction you get?
Well, I think the problem is it seems to be a bit antiquated to us in the fact that people like Gus are being told that it's a situation you've got to manage. And it's interesting that Gus has had 17 years of therapy. And, you know, if you're told that you can only, best result is management, then that's all you're going to get. But if someone gives you the hope and says, look, you can get over this, you know, PTSD can be successfully treated, we believe it's a different ball game. And not just for us, but we've worked with, as you know, we've been working with the universities in Amsterdam, and they've got a facility over there, and they also get great results in successfully treating PTSD.
It's incredibly frustrating to think that Gus, someone who served our country and protected us, is having to go to these measures just to get heard. He's absolutely right. You know, there does need to be more funding for research. And as you say, Eamonn, you know, we've developed a therapy. It may not work for all. It certainly worked for the people that we've helped. And we've been offering to share that. You know, we've been knocking on doors and saying, look, we've got something, you can have it, we'll train, we'll offer our services free of charge. We're happy to do that. Nick's father served, you know, we saw him suffer in silence due to the shame that's associated.
And how quickly do you believe, Eva, that you could help someone like Gus?
Because you believe, I mean, this is not a disease. Just explain this to people. This is I think it's termed a trauma, yeah?
It is, and that's what's so frustrating is that people like Gus, you know, really brave people who put their life on the line for us and for our country, they're suffering. You know, he's retired, but he actually hasn't. It's like he's still serving.
He's still on duty.
He's still on duty. He's still on high alert, as are so many. And in our, when we've helped people with post-traumatic stress disorder, that includes, people with complex and combat PTSD, we've been able to do that in a very short space of time, usually sort of within 1 or 2 sessions, and then a little bit maybe of a follow-up afterwards. But then that's it, because it isn't a disease, it's a trauma, it's been created due to things that have been seen, and we help people to change their perspective on those events and help them to see things differently so that they can actually be released from what it was that they saw and that they witnessed. And just by the nature of the symptoms of PTSD, something has got to happen. So, we say whether it's research, whether it's more awareness, but certainly, it's very sad to think that so many people suffer when, and we shouldn't be looking at management. Yes, in the short term, absolutely, management is essential. However, we also need to be looking at ways that people can overcome PTSD. If you look at the NHS website, it does state that PTSD now can be treated.